Welcome, everyone, officially. My name is Miss Daniels, and I am going to be leading you all through this guide to Tinkercad and custom cornucopias. I'm going to be sharing my screen so you all can see everything I am doing. At any point, if you have any questions, need to see something again, anything like that, please let me know. I will be keeping the chat open in this other window, so I'll be periodically looking over here. That way I can make sure I don't miss anything important that you all are asking. So let's get started. Students, if you are not already in tinkercad.com, you may need a class code from your teachers to get in and get started. But today we're going to be working on this cornucopia you see here. Now, we love Tinkercad because it is so powerful and because it is free and it has all these great classroom management tools. And I also love that it is easy to use and that it's constantly coming out with new features. So since I created this graphic a few weeks ago in preparation of this webinar, and today there's a whole new tool that Tinkercad has released that I'm going to show you how to use and implement into your cornucopia design. Now, before I get started with that, what is a cornucopia? So here are just a quick internet search looking at images of cornucopias. These actually come from ancient Roman mythology, where it was originally a horn that broke off by Zeus's, goat nanny. I forget the name, but the horn would then overflow with abundant fruits and vegetables and flowers and things like that. And so today we're going to make this classic horn of plenty shape, and if time allows, we'll start filling it in with some of the fruits, vegetables, flowers, and so forth. So since we do have at least K through 6 and possibly additional grades, because not every teacher was able to type in the chat what grades they're bringing today, I'm going to be showing everything at least twice. And if you're already very comfortable with 3D design and I'm going too slow for you, then feel free to start building things to fill your cornucopia with, as we will focus on making sure we have the horn shape. And then I'll show you how to create some of these basic sort of gourd or pumpkin shapes as well. Let's jump in. So here is my sample cornucopia. You can see I created a series of sort of tube shapes that curl around and to create that shape that I was looking for. And then I filled mine with some carrots. The pumpkin we made in our last design day. So if you missed this pumpkin creation activity, that is now on our YouTube site. So you could do that at some point in the future. But if you did join for last month and it did this pumpkin, you can definitely put that in your cornucopia as well. I have some grapes. I found someone had designed an apple where I just found it in the search bar. So there's lots of cool things you can do to fill in your cornucopia. But I'm going to jump straight in now to how to actually do the design itself. So from your Tinkercad homepage here, you're going to click Create. On the right-hand side, it's that big blue button, and then 3D Design. This will open up a blank slate, a virtual environment for you to do your creating in. Again, from your Tinkercad dashboard, you want to create a 3D design. Now, before we jump into the design, make sure you rename your file. So put down your name and then an underscore or a dash followed by cornucopia. And if you are in kindergarten or first grade and that word is just way too long, you can just do corn, which is C-O-R-N. Otherwise, cornucopia is C-O-R-N-U-C-O-P-I-A. I know it's pretty small in my screen here. Teachers, if you're near your board, you may want to write that up there for them because this is not your everyday spelling word. All right, so now that I have a basic work plane here, we're going to use the same technique we used in our pumpkin one, which is called duplicate and repeat. So the way I'm going to approach this is we're going to build one tube shape, and then we're going to make some edits to it, just a little bit of edits, and then take those edits and just keep repeating them over and over and over again to create this brown horn of plenty shape. So if you look at this one, each one of these little tubes gets a little smaller and it rotates a little bit around. And the more it does that over and over again, it gets smaller into a nice kind of point there at the end. So first thing we need to do is add a tube. So the tube that I'm going to use is called its mathematical name, which is a torus or a donut shape, if you will. And this is the blue ring looking shape down here from your basic shape panel. To bring it into your scene, you're going to click and drag, and that'll just bring it into your virtual environment. Again, to add the object to your scene, you will click where on this blue donut and drag it in to your scene. Oh, you can still see and hear me. Excellent. Okay, so it's just Tinkercad. All right, while this loads, once you have that basic torus shape, you're going to want to scale it a little bit bigger because right now it's pretty small. And then in the shape panel, that's sort of located in your, I might as well stop screen sharing while it is busy loading. Stop share. Okay, now you can see me better. So while this works on figuring out what it is up to, take your torus and then in the top right corner of your screen, you're going to have a shape box, and the shape attributes will allow you to adjust the radius of the torus, how big of a tube it is, how many sides. Just play around with those a little bit. And I'm very excited that my screen seems to be back and working. So let me share that. Okay. By the way, thank you for letting me know in the chat that you could still hear me. I appreciate it, Lauren. All right. So what I was saying is we want to make this whole thing a little bigger. So I'm going to do that by adjusting the radius. And as I slide the slide bar up, I can choose a dimension that looks like a nice open shape. If you think about that horn of plenty shape that I was showing earlier, it's relatively thin, but with a big opening just like this. So the only one I'm really going to change is the radius, but you are welcome to adjust, how detailed it is. If you want it to, be a smaller file size, maybe you adjust the number of steps down, or the number of sides can be more or less. So you can play with these, see what they do, but for now, just find something that's close. And if you want to change its color, I'm going to make mine a nice tan shade so it looks more like the classic cornucopia. And I'm just changing that color here. For this design, we're going to add so much detail that it might not make sense to 3D print, but it's just to look at in the computer. So I want the colors to look right. Now, of course, if I were to 3D print this, I would have to paint it or something afterwards to get all the good color you saw in that preview. So, all right, one more time. Bring in your torus, adjust the radius so it has a nice big opening. And then if you want to adjust any of these other settings, you can go ahead and do that as well. Once you're happy with your basic shape of your opening, you want to select your model, and I can tell it's selected because it has this light blue outline. And I'm going to rotate it perfectly 90 degrees. So I'm looking at these double-sided curved arrows. And when I click and drag, If I stay inside this blue line, it'll make sure it really snaps to these perfect angles. And I want to go right to 90 degrees. That's going to make sure that instead of being horizontal, my tube is right side up. So one more time, to rotate your torus shape, you will click on this double-sided arrow on one of the sides and then rotate it 90 degrees. Now, if yours is staying flat, pick a different one of those double-sided arrows, because if I had grabbed this guy, it would not be doing much. So you want to make sure you're getting one of the ones that is actually moving the object. All right. Now I'm going to use another new tool Tinkercad released in the last few months, which is drop to work plane. And I'm just going to click on that, and that just moves it up so that it's sitting on the work plane. You don't really have to do that, and if you missed how I did that, that's fine. But I will show it one more time, which is when you rotated it, your object is probably sort of sticking out your ground area. You can use the drop to work plane tool to just bring it back up to your virtual ground. For those of you who like keyboard shortcuts, that is the button D on your keyboard, as you can see there in green. All right, now I want everyone to stop what they're doing and watch what I do. And then after you've seen it once, I will go through it one more time slower for you to follow along. But watching what I do and how it impacts the model is going to be helpful for this next step. So what we're going to do now is actually create that shape. So with my object selected here, I'm going to click on the stack of papers button called duplicate and repeat. And when I click on it, it just flashes for a second, but nothing much happens. Now I'm going to use these little white squares to scale down my object. Now, if I do that right now, notice it is scaling from one corner. I would actually rather that scale from the middle of my cornucopia. And to do that, I'm going to bring the ruler in and click on this set of 3 lines here until it says use midpoint. All right, showing that part again. But like I said, still just keep watching, then you'll follow along. All right, bring in the ruler. Make sure you click on these 3 lines here so it is set up for use midpoint. And then once you've done that, use the duplicate and repeat and these little white squares to scale your object down. And if it is still pulling from that one corner, you may have to click on it again just to get it to cooperate. But I'm going to scale it down a little bit, and then I want to move it back off one side of my object, sort of off the back of the existing tube, and rotate just a little bit. So if I do this once, now when I click the duplicate and repeat button, I must have clicked out. That is the other thing, is you want to make sure you are not clicking out while you are doing this. So scale that down just a little bit, rotate it. And now duplicate and repeat, and it is creating a very small, weird horn of plenty shape. I can see here I didn't scale it down in this direction, but what I wanted you to see in this quick example is how it's going to continue repeating the pattern. So I'm gonna now do that slower with y'all and walk you through the full concept of this. So, all right, hands back on nice, follow along with this. All right, first thing we want to do is bring in our ruler. So that is up here in the top right. Drag that in anywhere into your work plane, doesn't matter where. And then by default, if you have your circle selected like this, you should notice the green lines go all the way to the edges of it. And if you click on these 3 lines here, that green line will move to the middle. That's telling it it's using the midpoint of the object. So make sure you have that set to use midpoint. That'll make everything easier. And now we're going to click on our torus, and use the stack of papers to duplicate and repeat. With that repeated, I'm going to use these little white squares on the corner of my object and just hold it down a little bit and use the Alt button on my keyboard and the Shift button on my keyboard. So by pressing these 2 buttons, I'm making sure that I am scaling from the middle of my object again, and that I'm doing it in all of the different dimensions. Now, if you're working on a tablet and you don't have a keyboard, you can still manually adjust the different dimensions. You can scale just one direction this way. So you have some flexibility here. You can even rotate different directions, whatever you would like to do. But keep in mind that everything you're going to do here is going to keep getting repeated. So once I have an object that's just a little smaller than my original tube and pushed a little farther back, I'm pushing it so that the 2 circles go in a line. And then the last thing I want to make sure I do is add just a little bit of rotation. So for this rotation, I'm looking from above, and I can rotate it just the tiniest little bit, 3, 4, 5 degrees, not very far. And now I can click duplicate and repeat, and it should just keep repeating this. Mine is acting up for me, but hopefully yours is not. But if it does act up for you like I am seeing today, I can manually keep repeating this object. But hopefully duplicate and repeat is working well for you, and it should just keep, there it goes, continuing the pattern as you have it. So do this all the way until you have a nice sort of cornucopia shape. And when you get very close to the end here, maybe on some of these last ones, you make the tube a little bit thicker, or you decrease the radius, something to just sort of close off the end of your cornucopia. So I'm just using those same settings that I had here and dragging this around. If you don't love the shape of your cornucopia, let's say it's, thinner than you want it thicker, you can grab all of the different pieces and scale them as one unit. So you can always be adjusting things that way. Quick check-in with the teachers in the room. Did the duplicate and repeat work for y'all? Are you getting some Horn of Plenty shapes in your classes? I know you may be going around to different computers, but if you are available to type in the chat, I'd love to make sure everyone is where we are. All right, I did get at least one group who has struggled with the duplicate and repeat, very similar to what I did the first time. So I'm gonna show you one more time to see if we can get this to work a little more consistently. So with your object selected, duplicate and repeat, drag it backwards. And I'm just gonna keep this one a little simpler. Maybe by using a few less buttons, it will be a little bit more cooperative, but I'm scaling it down. And I still do want the rotation because that's what gives the Horn of Plenty shape. But once you get it roughly lined up like this, and you click that duplicate and repeat, it should keep going. Now it looks like I may have left a little bit of an air gap in mine. That's fine. You may have that happen to you as well. For what degree of rotation? I'm only rotating it 3 or 4 degrees. I'm not going very far. But everyone's horn of plenty is going to be a completely different shape. You can see this one is a very different shape than the first one I created. And those are all good. So it's a little finicky. Certainly today I'm having more technical questions going on, but hopefully you are getting something by just scaling down, rotating just the tiniest bit, and then duplicating. And I found oftentimes the simpler I keep it, the more consistent it is for me. So you can end up with all sorts of various interesting shapes. And then, like I said, for the last shape, just decrease that radius, increase that tube amount, and that'll help sort of fill in the end spot here so that your cornucopia actually comes to a nice point at the end. All right, now that hopefully most folks have something like a cornucopia, or a horn of plenty shape. I'm also just gonna fill mine in with a sphere, because this one turned into a very strange shape after all. There we go. Just anything to kind of cap that off at the end. What you want to do with this, whatever shape you ended up with, is draw a big box surrounding everything, and then use the group button to combine them. So the group button is the one that is a circle and a square combined, and you can click on that and it will group all those objects into one. And so if you want to adjust the angle of your cornucopia, maybe make it sit, flatter towards the ground, or you want to have it where it's tilting up, any of those things just for aesthetics, you can adjust and make it look however you would like it to look within this, basic design system that you have here. Now, the last trick I want to show you is how you can fill this in. So I mentioned you can come in here and you can search for things to fill it in. Like I can search pumpkin, and people have made pumpkins, and so I can bring in pre-designed pumpkins to set inside my cornucopia, or I can, again, always just sort of line them up, scale them different dimensions, or you can create your own. And so this is the other tool I wanted to show you in the last few minutes. And this is the brand new tool called Revolve Sketch. Now, if you're not familiar with the sketch tool, and I'm bringing in just a basic sketch tool here, it is an ability for you to draw something and have that something get replicated in 3-dimensional space. Now, the Revolve Sketch tool is very similar. It lets you create an object, only now that object is going to get rotated around. So I'm going to bring a Revolve Sketch, that's this green one that looks like a top, in. And when I bring it in, it creates this new environment for me. And before I start drawing, I want to select the second option down here on the left. And this is going to use what's called Bezier curves. And these are very common in graphic design and different environments like that. So when I click on my center line here, I'm drawing what I want to turn into a rotation. So I'm going to click once and then click again. And I'm going to go for like a basic pear shape. But when I click the second time, I'm clicking and dragging. So I'm actually creating a curve instead of a straight line between the points. And I will go ahead and, you know, do a couple of these, and maybe it'll create a weird shape. Maybe it'll create what I want, but I can do a few of these to create some sort of basic pear or pumpkin type shape. When I reach the back of, when I go back to my center line here, I can click on the green check to finish drawing. And then you can go in and uh, adjust what you created. So you can, let's say you want that line to be smoother or something. You can go in and move any of these points you want until over here you have some sort of shape that you would like if you're doing, gourds, pears, apples, whatever it may be. And when you click Finish Sketch, it will create that rotation for you in three-dimensional space. Now, as I mentioned, everything gets done at least twice, so I'm going to show you another one, show you how to do that. Bring in the top from the side panel there, and then select the second option down. It's called Create Bezier Curve. And when I click now on the center line, I'm building everything off to this left-hand side. So I'll click once for the top of my object, and then click and drag for all future lines. So let's say I'm going for more of a pumpkin. Maybe I just do a simpler sort of a shape here. But everything I do here is getting turned into a three-dimensional object. And then the green check mark to say I'm happy. Finish the sketch, close the window, and now I have, a new shape. And I can change all these colors. I can add stems, I can add leaves, I can do all sorts of stuff now that I have the tools to create the, all the good fillings that would go inside a cornucopia. And then just lots of good time to practice using these scale and rotation tools. My degree is in animation. I learned how to make movies and do things like that. So one of the tricks, if you are building these sets and these environments in 3 dimensions, is to build an object once and then, squish it around to make it imperfect, scale it, color it something different. So, I have taken this one sort of pear shape or squash shape once, duplicated it, and now it could be a completely different item. I can do the same with a sort of pumpkin. Now I'm gonna, make this pumpkin really short. And it saves me a lot of time from having to build all of these individually, because now I have 4 different shapes, even though I only built 2 sort of basic forms. And so think about that as you're designing, whatever goes inside your cornucopia. And mine are sort of spilling out. I could move them inside the cornucopia as well. And I'm just playing with colors here, playing with orientation, trying to get things to look like they're sitting inside the Horn of Plenty instead of, overlapping too much. So there's just a lot of little tweaks and adjustments you can do to something like this to help it look more real, look more finished, very much like that example one I showed back at the beginning here with all these different objects coming out. So there's, the carrots, there's the flowers, all that stuff that I placed inside my original cornucopia. I know we did a lot today. We had a little bit of a struggle here with the Horn of Plenty, but hopefully you got there. If not, keep trying. It will work. And I hope you enjoyed learning a little something new. Teachers, just letting you know that we will be back with MimioSTEM's next learning lab just in 2 weeks, right around. This will be Friday, December 5th. And Jillian and I will be on a podcast talking about student driven or student inspired projects. So we hope to see you there. And as students, we will have more of these coming throughout the school year. So hopefully you'll be back for one of those. I'll stick around for questions if anyone had anything they wanted to ask or anything they wanted to see again for their cornucopias. Thanks, y'all.